Hello, friends. Welcome to the Mosaic Life Podcast. My name is Trey Kaufman. The goal of the Mosaic Life Podcast is to explore happiness, what it means to us as individuals, and why so many of us chase it, and yet so many of us struggle to find it. You can show your support for the Mosaic Life Podcast by listening. This is episode 100, and that's surreal to me. So thank you for everything. I'm going to try to keep this intro short because this conversation pushed past the 2-hour mark, and you're going to have the opportunity to hear more than enough of my voice shortly. But before we get started, Ernie Welsh, whom you may know as the man who helped create this podcast, joins me today. He was gracious enough to allow me to make this episode about me by asking me questions about myself solicited from listeners and supporters. But before we get into that, I need to express my extreme gratitude, joy, pride, and love for the man. I remember the day he decided to leave the podcast, and I know it was not an easy decision for him. I know because I was looking into his eyes. The consideration he put into the decision was immense. And I don't believe it was out of a lack of joy, but it was out of an abundance of ambition and drive to make a difference for his family, for the lives of the men he works with, and most importantly, for his own life. Everything he's accomplished since then has blown me away, and I couldn't be prouder of him. Look no further than the music he's been releasing as part of his brand new EP. I've included links to several of his new songs in the show notes, and I would personally be forever grateful if you would give them a listen. So, for the astute listener, you'll notice this episode came out on a Friday instead of a Sunday. That was done for a number of reasons, the 4th of July being one of them, but above all else, it's a thank you for helping this podcast come as far as it has over the last 100 episodes. I could say the Mosaic Life Podcast would be nothing without its listeners, and there would certainly be some truth to that. But more than anything, what brings me the most joy is having someone whom I've never met, or someone I went to college with, or a client, or one of my best friends who I had no idea even listened to the podcast express to me the value they've gotten through these conversations. That's one of the most amazing feelings I've ever had the pleasure of experiencing. So truly, thank you all. On top of today's early release, the release of future episodes will also be changing. Instead of Sunday mornings, starting with episode 101, the Mosaic Life Podcast will be moved to Tuesday mornings. That, according to science, is the best day to release podcast episodes, so I'm going to give that a try. And for the sake of clarity, the next full episode will be released on Tuesday, July 13th, bright and early. I will also be putting out a special bonus episode / reminder on the 11th to remind everyone of the move. So much for a short intro. Here's to 100 and 100 more. Ernie, Jimmy Suspect, how's it going, man? Thank you for coming on to this. I can't fathom this. To me, it's kind of felt like a cruel joke because the last podcast that I did, #questions, we had every goal of continuing on, but we just left the audience hanging at episode 99. So I always wondered if this moment would actually come, and you're here to hold my hand through this passage. So thank you.
Well, I will hold your silky smooth hands through this 100th episode, my man. Super stoked. I can't even put together the idea of 100 episodes and the fact that you're here. Congrats, man.
You remember when we started just talking about this?
Yeah. What was that, 2 years ago?
It was literally 2 years ago. It was like it's like August time of 2019. We met up by the water. We met up in the woods. I mean, it's not as weird as I'm making it sound, but
we held hands like like we are today.
Yes, I
know.
No,
that was super cool, man. We sat by the lake and we were just like, what would we do if we did this? How would it look? And then it happened.
I had no idea, man. I had no idea. And I've reflected. Obviously, it's been a time of reflection for me, as it probably would naturally be for anybody. How far I've personally come through this experience, and obviously, not obviously, we'll get into that in a second. But how much I've learned and grown through this process, and I've thought back specifically to what I've learned from you, and I remember having this very specific conversation about the tone of our speaking and the speed at which we speak and how thoughtful we are with our pauses. And to a certain extent, when we first started, I used to get frustrated that you would sit there and think about your answers. And I can't tell you how much I respect you instilling that in me, because I really think that I've become a much better conversationalist through what I've learned from you. And I'm much more thoughtful in how I respond now. And that's a direct thanks to you and how you carry yourself. So thank you for that.
Oh man. Yeah, no worries. I'm glad it was helpful.
I
was thinking about it as I got ready for today. I feel so rushed by the world. And, I realize, like, when I jump right in to answer a question that, most of the time it's all just, made up nonsense. And if I actually sit for a second and think about the answer, it has more meaning, and it's truer for me. It has more truth to it. So it's not necessarily a crazy spiritual practice or anything, but it helps for me to be more authentic. It's important, especially with my family, man. It's like,
absolutely, man.
If I just say the first thing that comes to mind, I might say something that I regret. I want to give better pieces of myself to my wife and kids, and then of course to the people that I interact with. It's hard though, man. Isn't it hard? Like, I'm sure for you, I don't know. Let me just ask, I guess. I'm sure you get people of every pace on this, and slowing down can be a bit challenging. For me, it is. So I'm just curious: is it hard for you to if you have this like high paced guest to kind of put the what is it when you get a horse, like to get the lasso and like corral them in or whatever?
Yeah, no, that's a very good question, because there are obviously many, many different types of guests and speakers, and none more right or wrong than the other. I have noticed I have generally segmented not necessarily my guests specifically, but interviewees into three categories. You've got ones that you do less of the talking and they do more. And then you've got the opposite, where I feel like I need to carry the conversation and nudge them along and give them permission to use anecdotes and, tell me more about their life. Or I've got people whose conversations you feel like you naturally connect and click with someone from the moment that you start talking with them. And again, nothing's right, nothing's wrong. It's just how your, I guess, wavelengths line up with the person with which you're talking or to whom you're talking. And when you have that unique opportunity to just really click with somebody, and I can give a very specific example. It was my conversation with Bill O'Haron when we first had our pre-interview. It was just one of those things that we just hit it off, and we talked for like an hour. Like, okay, Bill, we need let's save the rest of this for the actual conversation. But it's really fascinating to be able to match people's energies, and that's something that's not something that we're necessarily born with. And if you're able to learn and to grow with that, you're going to do very well in this world, no matter what it is you do professionally. It shows so much respect, and it helps bring people out of their shells when you can do that for them.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, I love that idea of somebody jumping on and you just connecting, and maybe you've never really met this person before, but you just sync up. Now, do you ever find it challenging to step away from a podcast? Do you have this like ritual after you're done to shake it off and move on to whatever next task you have?
No, that's a good question, though. It's actually leading up to the podcast where I get I still get nervous. I still get a little bit anxious and stressed out, especially when I'm talking about a specific topic that is a little bit over my head. A lot of times those are health related conversations, which I'm excited to learn about, but I also want to sound as if I have some semblance of intelligence on the subject. So generally what I do leading up to a conversation, I will not necessarily meditate, but there is one specific song that I really like to listen to. So 21 Pilots covered Elvis Presley's I Can't Help Falling in Love with You.
That's so
and they
good.
recorded that video. They're from Columbus and they recorded that video in Columbus. And that makes me smile from ear to ear. And it really puts me in a good headspace for that.
Dude, what a nice little meditation. Isn't he like playing a ukulele too?
Yes.
And with his like fans in front of it. What a good video.
I know, dude.
Put it in the show notes.
I will. And actually that reminds me, I didn't do it for this episode. So give me 5 minutes. I'll be right back. No, it's fine.
Let's just play it right now while in the background while we're talking.
I'm sure YouTube would absolutely love that. I'm sure their label would love that as well. Yeah. Man, dude, I seriously, I can't thank you enough. I would not have started. I can say this with the utmost certainty. If it weren't for you, I would not have started this podcast. Just your encouragement alone is what helped take me past you deciding to do your own thing, which we're going to talk about in depth, and carry it in a very unique and specialized direction, focusing through the lens of happiness. So I want to thank you one more time. I want to make you blush just a little bit more. Your thoughtfulness from the moment we met has been paramount to my personal growth. So thank you, Ernie, for everything that you do in my life.
Dude, thanks. It's good to be back connected in front of the podcasting mic here this time, but hopefully in person, maybe tonight.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
So a couple of things to talk about prior to really digging in. First of which, this conversation is something that I've been wanting to do for a little while. And I honestly can't think of anybody better to do it with. But if there's one thing that's been asked of me from listeners and supporters and guests, it's that they would like to know more about me as a host, which I say with humility because that's sometimes hard for me to do. So I've actually solicited questions from everybody who's taken part in the podcast, either listening or been on the podcast. And I've got like 50 questions that we're not going to get through all of them, but I've got a lot to share with the audience, which I'm really, really excited about. And Ernie will be that moderator. So Ernie, are you up for that challenge?
Amen, my man. Let's do it.
Fantastic. And then one last thing, this is something I'm probably going to talk about in the intro, and I'm going to talk about frequently to make sure that everybody understands it. Starting with episode 101, the podcast will no longer be coming out on Sunday mornings. It will be coming out on Tuesday mornings. And so with that, this is actually a decision that I made with the Believe Podcast Network, which I have spoken about previously. Tuesdays are just a better day to release podcasts. And so this particular episode, its release date is July 4th. So starting the following week, episodes will be coming out Tuesday mornings. I will put it everywhere I know how to put it. So just be on the lookout for that. You're not missing anything. This is coming out Tuesday mornings. Questions from the peanut gallery.
I was just wondering why Tuesdays are the best, and I thought maybe it's because Monday, it's the first day back to work. By Tuesday, they're like, "Oh yeah, I do hate my job," and then by Wednesday, they're like, "I've got to put something in my ears to get me through the rest of this week."
Honestly, I mean, I know you say that in jest, but I mean, I've read a bunch of articles and I've spoken with a bunch of people about it. That I think what you said is the general consensus as to why Tuesdays. Yeah, so that's it. This is a Tuesday morning podcast. Thank you for your support. Ernie, can I call you Jimmy just for a little bit?
Yeah, I guess I'll have to get used to that at some point.
Jimmy freaking Suspect, man. Since the last time we spoke, which was episode 75, which I think we recorded, it probably would have been, was it earlier this year, like January sometime?
January, February.
Yeah.
6 months.
You were working on your first, well, we're going to call it an EP, right?
Yeah, I think it technically has to be called that. I just want to call it an album so I feel cool though.
What's the difference? I honestly don't know the difference.
I think it's the amount of songs. I don't know the exact number, but I know there's a threshold where it goes from LP to EP to album. So
what the hell? Why don't you just write some more songs, man?
Well, I did. I did. But the funny, not the funny thing, the crappy thing, or the crappy, the challenging part of doing this for me was at certain points I had to realize that a song wasn't going to make the cut for whatever reason. Maybe it's just the recording wasn't coming out right. Maybe the mixing wasn't sounding right. And then sometimes it's legalities. Even if you're going to put it on certain platforms or sell it, it has to be completely legal. So it went from when I started maybe 8 songs, and then quickly to 7 to 6 to 5 and then to 4. So I have 4 songs that I can actually release. And then I didn't want to think about it anymore. It was really a goal to just put it out there. So I made, I grieved. It might sound kind of crazy, but I grieved the fact that I couldn't put these other songs that I cared a lot about on it, and then put what I had out. So yeah, it's an EP, I guess, technically.
Well, first of all, I mean, you gave me, and you gave the audience a preview on episode 75, and I don't. Do you remember what song that was?
Yeah, actually, it was going to be the lead single until I realized I liked another song better. It was "Living in Pain." So and the cut that is on episode 75 is actually different now. Side note, I guess I'm on a tangent here, but is going to sound a bit different than it did on that episode.
Well, that's good to know. I mean, a phenomenal song, but your single now is Bad News, right?
Yeah. There are 2 songs out now.
So good, man. So good. Like it's at the top ish of my liked songs right now. So I hear it a lot because I like to start from the top. And every time it comes on, man, it's just, I'm not saying this to blow smoke. I mean, it is one of those songs that I'm happy to listen to on repeat. I absolutely, I adore what you've done, and I applaud you for it because it is that freaking good.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm getting such good feedback from. Oh man, it's been really good. I love that song too. At the end of the day, like I only want to make music that I enjoy, and I probably when I got that song mastered, I probably listened to it. No joke, probably 200 times in a matter of 2 days.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Man. So I appreciate the feedback, and like I said, I've been getting such a good response from people with it.
That's actually that's something that I would love to talk briefly about, because when we talk about as creators, and I've always wondered this as a musician, because I'm so far from being a musician, do you listen to your own music? And I as a creator of podcasts, and I do listen to my podcasts, not just within the editing, but also after the fact, because not to hear my own voice, that's not what I want to do, but because I get to have all these really, really great conversations, and I still have so much to learn from them. So I want to stress how important it is to create for yourself, because you need to enjoy the product that you're bringing to life. And it really sounds like you're able to do that with your music.
I mean, in terms of that story, yes, there are many instances where I don't like to listen to it, especially if I sense just one little thing sometimes that needs to be changed or could have been different. It can like really get to me. So when I get a song that I want to listen to on repeat, I feel really good about it, and I'm really proud of myself. So I definitely do, but it's quite a process, man. I was over those songs by the time I released them, because I had been just beating them to death for 8 months trying to get them right.
Absolutely. So you've released a second single, correct?
Yeah, I guess, I'm not too hip with the times, but that's the way they do it now. That's the way you're supposed to do it. Nobody wants to listen to a whole album, so just drop one song at a time. So I dropped The Walls about a week after.
That's awesome. And so I've seen you on Instagram. I mean, you're getting, I don't know, is it a thing, is like a big thing to get added to playlists, to get added to curated playlists? Because it looks like you're getting those ads, right?
Yeah, I mean, yes and no. It is probably a big thing, and I have had 1 or 2 blogs and people add me to certain playlists, and which it was really cool. But I guess at the end of the day, any type of recognition, especially from people with taste in the industry, like they're in the industry in some way, or want to be in the industry in some way, and they're sharing your music to their audience. That's definitely helpful to get it out there.
Yes, man. Oh, that's amazing. When is your next release going to happen?
Yeah, I think I'm still working on that. I have 2 more songs that I'm going to drop, and I'm going to drop one in July, and either 2 in July or 1 in July and 1 in August. I'm not 100% sure. I'm actually working on putting a cover song out there as well.
Yeah.
So by the end of the summer, all the songs will be out.
Awesome, man.
Yeah.
Dude, I'm so stoked for you. I honestly, I mean, I didn't even know that you were so serious about music until you told me a story on a podcast. Either when we were doing this together or on one of the subsequent episodes. I mean, when you talked about playing out at a bar and your experience with that for the first time, which I'm like, oh
God,
damn, I didn't even know that you did that.
Did I tell that story on the podcast?
Yes, you did.
Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah, and then now yesterday we were having a conversation about actually you playing for real, man.
For real.
That would be so incredible, man. I can't wait for that.
Yeah. I'm really enjoying with music, as opposed to the other endeavors. I guess in a more general sense, but more with music, there's this healthy balance of desire and fear.
Yeah.
I desire it enough. I enjoy it. I get enough from doing it to want to continue and want to grow in it. And yet I'm afraid of every piece of it. And so I've just found that it's the right path at this point because of that thing. I want to do it and I'm scared out of my mind to do it. I did not want to release those songs. I did not want to, at the end of the day, I did not want to put the music out. I was so afraid of being vulnerable in that way. It's like, here's this interesting part of myself that people can just now take and assume anything they want about it. And they came from moments where I was in frustration or pain or sadness or some sort of discovery, and to put them out there, and it was scary, and but I had enough desire to keep every single day just giving myself enough of a pep talk, or I would think about my family or my dad and my sisters, and I was able to push myself through with other things. It's like I can easily escape it in some ways with other endeavors that I've sought in the past. I still do my men's work, and I feel that compulsion, or maybe is that the right word? I still feel that. I feel compelled, right, to grow into that as well. And so that's how I decided what this next chapter of my life was, because of that balance of desire and fear.
Man, I'm so proud of you, dude.
Thank you.
I really am, and I absolutely understand that fear. I've spoken about her literally the last 2 episodes leading up to this podcast, but I am reading my first book by Brene Brown, Daring Greatly. And she talks about being vulnerable and how we're fearful of shame. And it can be so difficult to break out, even though we have this niche, your music or this podcast, we have this comfort zone, and we can talk about Gay Hendricks too, and our zone of genius, and breaking through to that next level. It's just, it can be so terrifying to put ourselves out there. But once we're able to do so, we can really start to see what our true potential is. And I see that in you right now.
Yeah, man. Thank you. It's cool because to your point, putting the songs out there and getting the feedback that I have, people, hundreds out now, over 1,000 streams in a matter of I think it's been 2 weeks. People putting it on their TikToks, people that I don't know, like listening to it and saying something to me, friends from my past reaching out saying, "Whoa, this is incredible," or commenting on the posts, or getting these incredible write-ups from people I have never met. It was very validating, and now that I could talk about how much the attention is also exhausting at times. It's a lot of energy to manage, or at least for me, especially when I like to stay cooped up in my house more than anything, or out in the woods alone sometimes. But that validation, it did unlock this like other piece of me of wanting to be a little more experimental, being a little bit more, challenge myself a little bit more to push the envelope. And I started a few days ago to write for the next project, and some of the stuff that I'm coming up with, I'm just like, I'm sitting in my car, which is where I do most of my writing, so I can actually like bump my music and not wake my kids. And I'm just like to myself in the mirror, like, bro, this is so good. And I'm just like chilling by myself, but pumping myself up. And I think it is because I went through that fear, and it goes back to that story where I did the open mic, and how refreshed I felt after facing that fear. It just gave me new wind to push into this next project. And I'm super excited about that, because some of the stuff I'm writing is just like, whoa, where's this coming from?
I love it, man.
Yeah.
I love it. I want to talk more about your next project, and I also want to talk about the men's group. But what do you say we answer a couple questions?
Let's do it.
Cool. Man.
I like
All
it.
right, you're the moderator. You ask whatever you want. I'm just here to
welcome, folks, to Ask Trey Anything. Well, not anything, just the things on this list.
Just the things on this list. Yes,
you had your opportunity. That's not cut off. All right, so let's jump in, and I'm going to do this just a little freestyle here.
Yeah,
I'm going to just grab one. I'm not even going to read through it.
And read the name too, just whoever asked.
Awesome. Okay. So we'll start off with something easy, maybe something easy, from Tracy Joe. Trey, if you weren't a web designer or doing a podcast, what would you be doing?
God, man. Can I say like Ernie's personal assistant, or like grouping, or roadie?
I mean, that opportunity is still open. I have not filled that spot.
Okay. That's good to know, man. That's a really good question. I think back a lot, and I hope there's some utility here for anybody who might be younger. You have your dreams as a kid. They seem like moonshots, which is going to be very literal in a moment. Or pipe dreams, or whatever you want to call them. I personally always wanted to be a baseball player, which I know is, so very rare and actually happening. But what really struck me more than anything was space. And I've always been fascinated with the idea of our solar system, our universe. And to me, at the time, growing up in the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s, the idea of working for NASA and actually having that opportunity was so slim, and my dedication to studying and actually getting to that point where I was capable of making those decisions for my adult self, it was just it didn't exist, and I just don't think I gave myself the opportunity to do so. And so now, as we are reaching a new era of private space flight, yes, there's a part of me that kicks myself for not studying harder or not pursuing the things that I really, really wanted as a kid. Now, that said, I'm so incredibly happy with my life and my career the last 2 years in comparison to the first 10 years of working professionally. It's just been an insurmountable change, or a wonderful change for me, knowing that I have creative control over my own life and creative design over that as well. So I would have loved to have the opportunity to go to space. Never, if I'm ever rich enough to be able to afford a ticket on a SpaceX or a Blue Origin flight, then yeah, I would love to take that.
Nice. Yeah, I was going to say, I think they're in our lifetime going to achieve what's somewhat like a airplane flight for people to go to space.
Yeah, I know Richard Branson's working on that with his Virgin Galactic, and then Jeff Bezos, he is actually going up on his first flight sometime this fall.
That's right.
And there's a petition online that's reached like 25,000 signatures for him to not come back to Earth, which is funny and sad, and it's just all kinds of different things. I mean, I'm not going to get into the politics of his finances, but it's kind of hilarious.
Oh my gosh, that is so funny. The internet wins again.
Yeah, for sure.
Very cool. Very cool. What do you think that idea stemmed from? Was it just that everyone wants to be an astronaut, everyone wants to be a rock star, whatever that thing is, or was there a curiosity behind it? What was it that had you imagining yourself as an astronaut?
That's a good question. There's definitely curiosity behind it. I always remember just looking up and wondering what was beyond the blue. And always feeling, even from a young age, before having a better understanding of the world and how small we are, just really trying to grasp what life was at a universal level as opposed to a planetary level. Even before I understood what, the difference between a meteor or meteorite and comet and planets and microplanets and the stars and all of that. I knew that I wanted to know what was beyond. I'm looking up at the blue sky right now. What's beyond those clouds? What's beyond the atmosphere? I think it's at a more fundamental level. It's a desire to have that knowledge. I know everybody wants to know everything, but when it really boils down to what I want to know, I just want to know how small we really are, and what opportunities lay beyond our confines of Earth. Because I feel like there has to be so much more out there. Not that there's not enough here, but I want to expand my view.
Yeah, man. Beautiful. Awesome. Yeah. Do you want to do another question?
Yeah, man. Do another question.
Let's keep it going. All right, Trey. If you were assigned to create this mandatory reading list for all of the world to read, so this every 18-year-old to turn 18, they weren't officially allowed to be 18 until they read this book. What would one book be that you would assign for everyone?
By and far, and this is not going to come as a surprise to anybody, Ego is the Enemy by Ryan Holiday. Without a doubt, man. I mean, I was reading that book when I met you, Ernie, and I know you and I had a fascination with meditation and Tim Ferriss, and subsequently Ryan Holiday at that point when we were both on personal development journeys. And I actually even wrote to Ryan a couple of days ago and said, hey, man, listen, your books have absolutely changed my life. And I know that sounds hyperbolic, and it's not. If I could go back and express just what it was about that book that made me rethink my decisions. There was a point in my life when I was just asking, is this decision motivated by my ego? Is this decision motivated by my ego? And I would run everything that I was doing through that filter, and just getting an understanding of what ego is, and not trying to suppress it like I thought was the correct answer, but just trying to live alongside it instead of us butting heads, having an understanding of what's the best for both of us. And that book, it allowed me to express so much more gratitude in my life, to appreciate the other things that people are doing and not think that I'm the hottest shit in the world, because I'm not. It was absolutely transformative. And it's a fairly short book. And if I were to recommend one book to anybody, it would be that one.
Nice. I liked how you said not getting rid of the ego, but living alongside it.
It's important, man. I mean, it seems ethereal. It seems like something that's, akin to the soul, but I mean, it is part of who we are. And it drives so much of our decision making day to day that if we're not cognizant of that, then we can really derail ourselves.
Mm. Awesome, man. So that was also a question from Tracy Joe. I will now move to somebody else. I won't ask all of Tracy's questions today.
And thank you, Tracy. Tracy is a friend. She's also a client. And she too is always working on becoming the best version of herself. And so I love seeing her posts on Instagram, just she's hustling, working out, she's just doing all of the right things. And I love seeing people do that.
Yeah, she really showed up for you here. She brought a lot of questions that we can use, and I might refer back to them as we move through. She also sent you a note. It's not a question, but it says, thank you for being my friend.
Thank you for the Golden Girls theme song, man.
Is that what it is? Well, nice. Yeah. Awesome. Cool. Let's see if I can find this other question that I wanted to pry on.
This feels so weird. I'm just going with it. Yeah.
You're on the hot seat, man.
I know, man. I'm sweating.
What feels weird?
Even in the conversations that are not recorded, I always tend to be the one pointing the questions at other people.
Yeah.
It's to a certain extent, yes, it's just training, and I want to know things about other people, but it's also probably a defense mechanism, so I don't have to overshare about my own life. So it's something that I'm trying to be a little bit more open-minded about.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this is your space to share everything, man. And although it may feel like the pressure's on, it's actually an opportunity for you to just, to even overshare. It's all good here. Of
and
course,
honestly, I mean, like I said, I couldn't even think of a better person to do this with me.
Let's do it.
So thank you. Yeah.
Okay. What is your boldest and most audacious dream for your life, Trey?
You know, for some reason, the first thing that pops into my head is Tony Robbins and how he carries himself, not just on stage. I've never actually attended one of his events, but hearing him speak and hearing about even outside of his empowerment work or transformational work, if you want to, whatever you want to call it, he is such a genuine human being. I heard a story, and I'm going to butcher it, where he heard of a family, I think in another country, who was suffering or being threatened by the mob or mafia, or maybe I'm just completely off base, but he brought these people into his home and took care of them to make sure that they were no longer being threatened with their lives. And I really love Tony's level of generosity and authenticness. I don't know if that's even a word, but I love how authentic he is. And if I could strive to be 1/10 as inspiring and authentic and gracious as that man, I would absolutely be over the moon, because I used to want to do things like this. I used to act in independent films because going back to the ego, I wanted to have name recognition with Trey Kaufman, and that doesn't matter to me anymore. What I love is getting a random text message saying, "Hey, listen, Trey, that episode meant a lot to me." A buddy of mine he just got promoted to being vice president of his company, and he credits, not obviously all of the credit, but he credits what he's heard on the podcast to give him motivation to actually pursue something like that. If I can push
awesome,
people,
man,
to demand the best for themselves, to do better, and people will take that and they will use it in their own lives. That is what really brings me a lot of joy.
That's great, man. You're already seeing that. It's interesting. You say 1/10, but I just after that story alone, it's like, man, you're probably succeeding in that way. I'm just wondering what do you see between you and that place? Like what would you have to become or implement or see change in your life to be that ideal?
Yeah. That, I'm struggling with that, because I don't necessarily know that there's anything else at this point in time that I would change in my own life if I weren't already doing it. The first thought is, reach more people. Why not? Let's be Joe Rogan. I don't necessarily know that I want that, but if I could continue to provide a value to people's lives, and they continue to share this with their friends and family who hopefully will gain value from it, then, I mean, that's all I can really ask for. I know that's dodging the question, but I want to make sure that what I'm doing is perceived as valuable to as many people as possible. And I sometimes, I question, is this the right format for that? I don't know. So I'm always open to change as long as it's not compromising the values of what I'm trying to accomplish. So I don't have an answer as to what else I need to change to get there. I guess it's just every single day continuing to do the work, which has been a theme and mantra of this podcast from episode 1.
Yeah, man. Beautiful. So being more generous, or not more generous, but being as generous and authentic as possible. That's your bold and audacious goal. And that's, honestly, when I was reading it, I was expecting it to be, something, not expecting it, necessarily, but almost just by the way the question was written, anticipating something tangible, like, something, or some creation. But the fact that you brought up a type of presence, a type of being, I was like, man, that's solid stuff. So beautiful, man.
Well, I appreciate that. And yeah, I guess you're right. I mean, it's nothing that I can go out and buy and do. It's just continuing to push myself to be the best version of myself. I don't know. I mean, I quit drinking very intentionally, and I started meditating again very intentionally, because I know that there are things that I want to accomplish, and if I'm not taking care of myself, then I'm not going to get there.
Yeah, right on.
Which, real quick, who asked that question?
Yeah, I keep forgetting that part. Julie, the retreat goddess.
Julie was a recent
awesome.
guest on the podcast, and she does incredible work. She actually helps women. They go on retreats around the world, and this is a newer concept that I recently heard of, which is really cool. Instead of just putting your finger on a globe and saying, "Hey, I'm going to go here," there are people who help guide you through international experiences to make sure that you get the most out of a trip, as opposed to just visiting the touristy spots, which is insanely cool concept that I really respect. So Julie's doing really cool things. But in regard to pushing people or pushing ourselves to do better, I want to talk more about your men's work, man, because I know you're having a huge impact on the people in your lives, or in your life. And I want to hear more about it, because the last time we spoke, I know it was something that you were still trying to build.
Yeah. Well, it's become a staple in my life. Yeah. So it's definitely something I'm still trying to build, or building rather, not trying. It's building now. Which reminds me of I think Tim Ferriss, he says, do something to scratch your own itch. Right.
Yes.
And that's what the, it's not what the men's group started as. It was definitely me trying to get somewhere with it. And then I realized that it had utility in my life, and in the lives of the men that were in it. And it's been growing in that way, almost organically. We have the next iteration. I've been calling them semesters.
Yeah.
It sounds very school-like, but I didn't really have a better word for it.
I like that word, because it gets people to buy into it. It's not, I think retreat has its own place and time, but I like semesters because that you're going there to improve yourself.
Yeah, that's really cool. Maybe that's a part of the reason that word came up is it is kind of a school or something of that nature. But I recognized, when I first started the group, it was just an indefinite thing. We meet every 2 weeks on Sunday, and that's it. Like that's what. But then I recognized that we need a break, and how do we determine those breaks? Or at least maybe we don't need a break, but it felt as though a break was needed, and it also made coming back to the group. There was some anticipation and energy around it, rather than it just drolling on week after week or month after month. So then I closed them down into little semesters, which exist as 3-month containers where we meet on a bi-weekly basis online. And then each semester is capped with a 3-day retreat in the woods somewhere. And it's been incredible.
That's fantastic. Dude.
Yeah, it just doing the group, leading the group, it causes me to step up.
Yeah.
When it's like I've got it, it's laid out there. I can't just not show up. I can't do bare minimum. I have to show up, and I have to give something of value to these men. And so it asks for more of me in my life. But in addition to that, it's every single hour that we spend together on those Sundays. We all leave the group feeling totally different. The practices that we do, the discussions that we have, it really drops us into our body and realigns our focus and in a matter of an hour. It's incredible the way how far we can. It's incredible how far we can drift from ourselves in a matter of a day or a week or even 2 weeks. But how quickly we can come back to that is even more impressive. And that's what the group's been for me and for the guys that are in it. And then we go on the retreat. We disconnect completely. We do some active meditation, not just sitting all the time. although that is a part of it. But we do active meditation, we do partner practices, whether they're like discussions or even like physical practices. And then we do group work. We do challenging. We do challenging discussions or assignments.
Yeah, man.
Things that just get us out of our comfort zone, but we do it in the safety of wilderness, being out in the
Right.
middle of nowhere, away from technology, away from people, away from the job, away from the family. And the stuff that I hear after these retreats is what keeps me
Yes.
lit up to do it
Yes.
over and over and over again, because it's like I said, it's great to see how quickly we can come back to ourselves in a matter of an hour. But if you do this work for 3 days in a row, you access a part of yourself that the men have accessed parts of themselves that they've either never felt or haven't seen in a long time. And then they go back, and this ripple effect into their lives is just incredible.
Yeah.
And it's, when I was on the podcast, I did a talk about breaking the circuit, and that's really what it is. We are breaking the circuit, the traditional way that we act, the ways that we tense up in our lives, and how we maneuver around the fear, the frustration, the sadness, the shame, the anger, and how we're just kind of creeping through, making it all work. We break out of that. And when we do that, see, a lot of people will say, a lot of people will look at their lives and point the finger and say, if they could change this, and I do it too. I get locked up all the time, and I'll be pointing my finger at somebody else saying it's because of this thing that they're doing. But when we do this type of work and we completely break open, just obliterate this tension out of our body and come back into our lives, it literally changes the circuitry of everyone around us, and they show up to us differently because we are showing up as more trustable men. And the connection with your partner is better, whether it's in conversation or whether it's just looking at each other in the eyes, or whether it's on an intimate level. Your children will listen to you and hear you differently, and react differently. Your job will feel different to you, and you will invite into your life more opportunity. It's like when you become more trustable, when a man becomes more trustable, then the people and the world around them will start to move to fit what that man is wanting to do in the world. Yeah. Because it's like, here, you are a strong, trustable man. Take this, and hold it up and build it up. And the opportunities are incredible. And some of the decisions that the men have made after leaving the retreat, or after a call that we do, and some of the things that have happened in my life, for instance, this project, this music, I would not have completed if I wasn't so deep into this movement of men's work the way I have been in the past 2 years.
Yeah. I don't want to oversimplify it, but I mean, it's very much the law of attraction. I mean, you are instilling in these men and yourself these values that they want to in turn have within their circle of friends and family. And not only are people who see those values as having merit more attracted to that man, but the people whose values that are magnetically opposed to will fall off your radar, as it naturally should be. And it to me, I know we used to talk about this all of the time on the podcast. We talk about Tim Ferriss. I think it was him. Maybe he just got it from somebody else, saying you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time in your life with. And when you talk about an average, I mean, you are pulling all of the things, good or bad, from the people that are around you in your life, and you are making them a part of your own. And when those people around you are generally have, values that are perceived as good and worthy, then you are
Totally.
absolutely making yourself step up, and that is such a good feeling.
Yeah, it's awesome, and you bring up so much in that reflection. Uh, most most, I'm gonna keep saying men just because, and I know a lot of the things that I might be saying, or a lot of the things I'm saying might probably have relevance to women, like
Yeah.
100%. But I've been drawn to and led to doing this work with men because I believe we have an absence of strong and trustable masculine leadership in our lives on a day-to-day basis, and at a global scale. So I'm still going to reference men specifically, although there is plenty that is applicable
sure.
to anybody's life. But most men's relationships, I believe, come from proximity.
Yeah.
So, you know, your parents happen to choose the same town and you both went to the same school and you happen to be in the same classroom sitting next to each other, or whatever. You had lunch at the same time and you met through da 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 da, or you work at the same place, and so you hang out with these people out of proximity, but it doesn't necessarily mean that your values or desires in life are at all connected.
Right.
And that can be an issue if men can't look at each other and have intellectual conversations about the stuff that we care about and want to see happen in our worlds, in our societies, and in our life. And so, yeah, being around other men in a format like this where you're being called to solidify what it is you give a shit about. like what is it that you care about? Not what you think you should tell us that you care about. What is it that you care about? Yeah. What is it that you want your world to look like, and why? And then have other men hold you to that while you see these other men talk about and clarify what they care about. Yeah. And that does have this, it has this, the only word I can think is like viral effect. It's very contagious.
Yeah, I mean, it's I'm not going to say this word right, but mimetic. I mean, it's a meme. I mean,
it's similar to that idea. And not only that, but just being in the group and being witness to the other men growing and evolving is so incredibly transformational for a person. The first men's group I was in, I was more in the background trying to process it all. I wasn't as open and vulnerable in what I was experiencing and what I wanted in my life, right, and what my shortcomings, whatever. But I was watching, and as I watched, I saw men that I made judgments about, that I thought they were way better than me because they made more money, they drove a nicer car, because of the way they talked and in front of a crowd of people or whatever. I made these judgments that these guys are way better than me, and I have no reason to be in this group. I don't know why the hell they let me in. And then I would hear these guys talking about some of the same things that I was dealing with in the same way that I was dealing with it.
Yes.
And I got to recognize that those millionaires over there, that best-selling author over there, that dude who's super jacked over there is literally the exact same person as me. Like there is no difference. And there was an evolution happening in my mind by being witness to that, that allowed me to step up and be a different form of myself, one that I was tucked away, afraid of, or not afraid, maybe afraid, but didn't really know was actually there. And that alone, aside from being a part of the group and clarifying your own will, what you want. It's an incredible, there are so many facets to why it's impactful. And that's why I've been so passionate about it. And I don't think it's a piece of my life that will ever go away. It's something I'm always going to be building.
I know it wasn't your intention, but you made a very poignant and strong point right there. I love how you said that's not a part of your life that will ever go away. I used to, for the longest time, have such a fear of regression that I would fall back into old habits or I would fall back into old ways of life. And at some point along my timeline, that kind of disappeared because I think I started to realize that the changes that I was making in my life they weren't they weren't glimpses of the other side where the grass is greener. They weren't glimpses of alternative realities. They were actually the results of work that I had done and it was continuing to do. And even if I, somehow fell off the wagon, I would still feel drawn to the path that I had decided to take. And so I love how you said that because I think I'm probably not alone in any sense sharing that fear that, oh no, am I going to fall back into old habits? Well, yes, there's always a possibility of, letting ourselves slip up, but we have to give ourselves permission and remove the judgment from failure because we're raised with the idea that failure is this poison that is going to, affect not only us, but our roots. And, it's going to trickle down to our children. And failure is not that. Failure is not poison. It's not venomous. It is this opportunity for us to learn, for us to grow, and for us to do better and make better decisions next time. And so what you said there, that was a strong realization for me.
Yeah, man. It actually seems like a nice segue back to questions. What do you think? We jump into a few more questions.
Let's do it.
Yeah. I'm going to find the one that was.
And not to derail us one more time, but I want to point out that I can't tell you how many of my conversations are drawn back to Gary Mahler. And I don't even think you introduced the two of us. I think he was introduced, Tiago introduced us.
Probably.
And then through him, I've met Emma Holmes and David Schwindeman, and I think a couple other people, just people who all know you.
And ladies.
Yes. It's incredible. The people, when you surround yourself with incredible people, it just always comes full circle and right back to you, Ernie. So, I mean, I guess, thank you for our conversation with Tiago because I met amazing people through him, but
we're so connected, man. It's like the whole 6 degrees of separation. You would never really believe it until it starts to manifest itself in front of your eyes. It's like, oh wow, you know that person, and and you'll introduce me. Great. That's perfect. Gary is a man. He's awesome. Like he is everything and nothingness all at the same time. He's just like pure space with love, and the dude had changed my life. I was actually realizing today on my drive over here to record this that I haven't listened to that episode. I'm like beating myself over the head for not actually listening to it. So I think I'm going to pull it up on my drive to Columbus today.
Yeah, please do.
So I can't find the question I was searching for or the iteration of the idea, but I'm just going to say this question's from Jimmy Suspect, who wrote in today just moments ago.
Perfect.
So speaking of failures, and like I said, I think this came from somebody. I just don't see it on the list right now. This is twofold. Let's start with. It doesn't have to be. We'll just do in the podcast in general with this venture, with podcasting. What do you see as your biggest quote unquote failure, and what was it like overcoming that?
So just for the sake of credit, Christina did ask a question about failure, but I like your question. So I
knew it was on the list. I'm just trying to find it, and I couldn't suss it out while I was trying to listen too.
I think, like beauty, failure is in the eye of the beholder. Because again, I don't see it as a poison. I think one thing that I fail with personally a lot is, and I don't know, this is going to be a weird way of construing my words, but I really strive to, not just through the conversations, but especially through the marketing and through social media and through every other possible marketing avenue there is out there, do it with a sense of my own integrity, which isn't the same as other people's integrity. And that's not a bad thing. I've got obviously no problem putting myself out there. We're having this conversation now about me, but I don't like to listen to the podcast on Instagram. I don't like that. I do struggle with doing like live videos, which I've done a couple in the past. You did some awesome ones in the past as well. So I think I need to be more comfortable marketing the podcast in a way that is useful for growing the audience better, but it also aligns with my own values. And I think that's probably the biggest quote unquote failure that I've had in that regard. But at the same time, there is slow, steady growth, which feels much better to me.
Yeah. You know, and this may not be true, but just to go into that a little bit more, have you ever read the War of Art?
Yes, I have.
What a cool book, first of all, and
Stephen Pressfield.
easy read.
Yeah.
But one of the things that he said in that book that struck me the most was you have to be able to detach your personal life from your professional life.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's beautiful. Thank you. I can now be professional and do things to move that part of me forward and not make it have to do with me. Yeah. However, in this field, what you're doing, you're literally putting your personal, in some aspects, you're putting your personal life out there as your professional life. I mean, you're talking about your life, you're talking about what you're learning. And so I can sense that, or I can see, however, how it could be challenging to just separate the professional life from the personal life in this, and wanting to be completely in integrity with the way that you're asking people or marketing yourself. With the podcast. I mean, is that true for you, I guess?
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. And I was waiting for you to give me the answer to that. I mean, what do I do?
Oh, I don't know. Yeah, that's a good question. I would say, honest to God, this is my answer to that. When you, and this is just a suggestion, I'm not saying this is the cure to life, but it seems to be for me. When it's unclear, be intentional about what you want. So for instance, the question might be, how can I promote this episode, or how can I promote the podcast in general, or how can I be in integrity and unashamed, shamelessly put this podcast in people's lives or in people's faces, right? Like, so how can I shamelessly do this, and then go sit in the woods and don't fucking move. Yeah, literally, I'm serious, dude. Like, I'm dead serious.
I'm with you.
And until you're driven out of your seat, by the answer, right? Getting that clear question, like, what is it you're trying to accomplish? Okay, get that question right until it sinks into your bones and excites you, and then go sit until you can't, until it tells you, like, you've got to do this.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that a lot. No, that's a very on brand. And I don't say that. I don't say that in jest.
You can't do that. That's out of integrity. No, you can't say on brand.
Yeah.
I'm kidding.
No, I like it. No, I honestly, I know this, I should stop saying this, but I know that's not the intent of meditation, to have groundbreaking ideas while you're doing it. But more often than not, I have oh shit moments while I'm meditating, which is probably one of the reasons why I started up again. Just because things kind of click when I'm able to sit with my thoughts and not be distracted by other inputs.
Yeah.
And so, no, what you said, I appreciate.
Yeah. And maybe it is the point. Who knows?
Yeah.
I mean, it's, for some people, the point is to not feel overwhelmed and anxious.
Right.
And for other people, it's to talk to God, or for other people, it's like to get that authentic place within themselves. I don't know. I think it is the answer sometimes.
I'll go with it. Let's go with
it. Yeah. Let's move on. Let's find another question here. I'm going to go random here. Thank you, Christina. Yes, I did find it on the list after you said what name it was under.
And so real quick, shout out to Christina. I'm a part of this, and I've spoken about it before, a network called Lunch Club. It's just not, and I invited you, Ernie, onto it, but you've never done anything with it.
Are you trying to shame me?
Shaming you. No, I'm kidding. But no, Christina was the very first person I met on Lunch Club, and we have become great friends since then. And she's become such a champion of the podcast, and I cannot express my gratitude to her for that.
Very cool. Yeah, that's exciting actually, and what makes me want to get on Lunch Club. I probably won't, but but it makes me want to. Shameless little plug there. Maybe you can get them to sponsor your podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to talk more about the whole marketing the podcast and integrity. That seems like an interesting tangent. We don't have to go there now, but anyways, we can move on to another question here. Let's see what we got on the list.
And you may recognize some of these names probably.
I do. One I recognize right here, this lady named Brianne Showman.
Yes.
Let's jump in. She says, you've mentioned in the past that you were not always on the path of self-discovery and becoming a better human being like you are today. What was the trigger or the reason for you to change to this path instead of the one you were on?
You know, it may not come as a surprise to say that it was gradual, but I will say, this probably won't be the last time I say this, but without a doubt, the absolute best decision I've ever made in my adult life was to quit drinking. I've spoken about stopping drinking previously, but I want to say beyond any shadow of a doubt that quitting drinking was the single best decision I have ever made. And that's not to shame people who still drink. I had a problem in the sense that I abused alcohol. I would use it to numb myself. I would use it to avoid problems. I would use it to avoid work. And I would do it because I was bored. I also was incapable, and I may be selling myself short, but I'm using the word incapable of just having one drink. If I were to have a glass of wine, I would see the rest of the bottle as a waste, and I would generally drink the entire bottle or 6-pack or insert your alcohol of choice. And so when I decided to quit drinking, I knew that I had not just the power to make positive decisions, but the power to pursue the things that I've always wanted to pursue. And so many of those were on a journey to self-improvement. So the impetus for drastic self-change and improvement was quitting drinking. But like I said, I mean, honestly, I use this point in time as a reference point, but it is not specifically because of you, Ernie, but when you and I met, that was when I was really starting to make the decisions to lead a better life.
Wow.
And I mean, that was, I don't know, almost 6 years ago now, probably.
Yeah. Incredible, man. Glad you made the choice. What were some of the things that you were experiencing in your life, you know, in reality that you're like, Trey, what the fuck, man? Like, this isn't going to work. I don't want to be here in 30 years. What are you doing?
You know, so the episode 99, I had a conversation with Forrest Rivers. I think that's actually a pseudonym or a pen name, but he's a great.
That's pretty sweet.
It is. He's a great guy. He lives in the Blue Ridge Mountains of North Carolina. And he's an author, and he wrote a book called COVID-19, Humanity's Spiritual Awakening. It was a great book. And one, I guess his own personal spiritual awakening was he was arrested a number of times on alcohol charges and other things that we didn't get into, but he also really abused alcohol. And I'm getting lost in my own thought.
Well,
what was your question?
Was what was the reality that you were seeing that finally said, okay, Trey, let's step it up.
Yeah. And so I had mentioned in that episode that I honestly can't count the number of times that I had blacked out in my adult life, or the number of times when I would wake up in the morning and say, hey, Trey, how did you get here? Several of those times I had driven home myself. And that thinking back, that is not a unique narrative. At least with the people I had surrounded myself with, who were not bad people by any means, but it was just this culture of alcoholism that I think that we were kind of bred into. And so I didn't want those decisions to weigh on my conscience anymore. And I knew that I was not giving myself the opportunity to prioritize the things that I actually wanted to do, like start a business. And I really do credit the success that I have in my business with the hard work that I've put into it. And alcohol it was not playing into that story, into that ambition, because when I would drink, there was no work to be done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, man. Well, whenever you had that moment that final moment. I'm sure there were little pieces of that moment, and then it led up to this moment where you're like, boom, I'm done, I'm changing.
Yeah.
What was that like? Was there some sort of like ritual for you? Like I'm throwing all this stuff out, or I'm moving out of this town. You know what I mean? Like a lot of people, or not a lot of people, but I know myself, if I'm making a change in my life, I often want to commemorate it in some, I don't know if that's the right word or not, but to instill it in some way. And maybe that's like a certain proclamation to myself, or maybe like it's been leaving town sometimes. So that's why that comes up. I'm curious if there was a moment for you or some instance that you decided to just this whole upheaval of your life to change.
Yeah. I know you and I have talked about some of this on the podcast, but I don't remember how much. But I mean, the real moment that I was like, okay, something needs to change, and then it finally did a couple weeks later. I was at my buddy's bachelor party, and we got absolutely hammered downtown. And I all of that aside, and the stupid things I said and did that night, the next morning I still had a part-time job at my climbing gym. And I remember bending over to pick something up, and I was so close to vomiting on the floor. It was the single worst hangover feeling that I had had in my entire adult life. And I knew I didn't want that anymore. I knew I didn't want that. And so a couple of weeks later at his actual wedding, I was standing on the outskirts of the dance floor because I was not going to dance sober, and just thinking to myself, what if I gave myself one opportunity, 1 year, to see how much I can accomplish without having alcohol as an influence? And so I made the decision that night to try to accomplish 10 big audacious goals over the next year period. Well, spoiler alert, 2020 was a rough year for everybody, but I was able to see how much value not drinking was, or how valuable not drinking was in my life. And I was able to accomplish a handful of those goals too, which was phenomenal. And then, yeah, I knew probably halfway through 2020 that I didn't want or need to touch alcohol again.
Sweet. So you took this leap into these giant, almost crazy goals.
Yeah.
And that's what your like commitment, that's what your commitment looked like. Beautiful.
Yeah. And then, so I guess to drive that home a little bit more, when we started this podcast, what I had told myself is I really wanted to find an algorithm for happiness. I don't know if I even expressed that to you. I wanted to find and unlock the secret to happiness. You know, no big deal. Nobody's ever tried that before. Right. So when I took over the podcast, that's when and why I really started to focus on these conversations based on happiness. But through that, not only have I realized, and I know there's some questions about happiness in here, I realized how holistic the idea of happiness is. One of the things that plays into happiness for me is that my personal health and well-being and how I feel. You talk about bending over and wanting to puke because you're hungover. I never wanted to feel that way again. So I actually set a goal for myself to feel good 100% of the time. And I know for a fact that alcohol will drop that average drastically. And so through sleep, through nutrition, diet, exercise, every element of my life, my goal is to feel good 100% of the time. I mean, if I had to guess, I'm probably at about 95% right now. I feel good the vast majority of my life. Yeah.
I like how it went, how it was happiness, and then it kind of went to this other thing, feeling good, and that seems very measurable. It's like, how do I feel right now? How do I get to the other side of that if I'm not feeling good? What would it look like to feel good, and how can I do it? Happiness can sometimes, the word, seem a little bit evasive. It's almost like, how do I reach out and grab that thing? It's just a word out there, and I think I know what it looks like, but I don't really know. But feeling good is something you can tap into in any moment. Like right now, you can feel your body, you can feel your mind, and what's going on for you in your life. Do I feel good? Do I not?
Yes. And it's very much a measure of self-reflection and, checking in with yourself, which I think that you do often as well.
Oh yeah, I have trouble turning it off. I've had a few heartbreaking lessons with that, but definitely a useful tool when used wisely. Do I feel good, and what can I do to get there? let's ask a question that's not so. Let's ask a fun question. Yeah, let's see here. There was one on this list that I was really wanting to ask. I wish if this weren't so long, you know what I'm saying? All you people, man, just sending all these questions in. What the heck? I got to sort through them. It was, I'm just going to just say it and then we'll find the person in the meantime.
Yeah.
What were your childhood nicknames?
I think
that was Tracy Joe. I knew we'd come back to you, Tracy.
Yeah. She's got the bang, bang, bang questions, like the fast questions, the lightning round questions.
Yeah.
I had a handful. I mean, when I was little, my dad or my uncle used to call me Trey B, like Trey B. I don't know. I guess it has a ring to it. And then, in my formative middle school years that are embarrassing for just about everybody, you can imagine what Trey rhymes with. So I got Trey Gay a lot, which now that I say it, it's more like Ray Gay.
Yeah, that's kind of good.
Yeah, I do kind of like that now. I got Lunch Trey. Yeah. So any sort of
those are like bully names. Those aren't like childhood nicknames.
Right. No, my main childhood nickname was Trey B.
Trey B.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay, here's another question from the fabulous Anna Bitters. Shout out to her. She is an awesome woman. I had the incredible pleasure to actually work with her a little bit through this music process. And when it comes to creativity, bar none, she's got the work.
Yeah. And I didn't know you guys worked together. That's awesome.
Well, it was literally a 30-minute phone call that was boom, like, oh, thank you so much.
Good.
But rightfully so, her question, how do you express yourself creatively?
You mean like aside from this podcast?
Yeah. Actually, let's start there and then we'll move out from that. So that's a could be a diverse answer. This podcast is a way that you express your creativity. What do you mean by that? What is the way you use this podcast to do that?
That's probably, I'm probably oversimplifying by saying this podcast, because this is more, I don't know if creative is the right word for this. It probably isn't, to be honest with you. I mean, you're certainly creating something. You're creating content, which is, kind of a buzzy type of word now, content creation. But, I do my best to grow as a conversationalist through this podcast. And yes, there are some opportunities when it comes to right. So I think I've expressed this before, and, sorry to peel back the curtain, but all of my intros, at least, and probably before the time that I took over the podcast, are written out. Like I write them out ahead of time. I've tried to do them off the cuff, and it just takes me forever to try and get it right. So I get to express myself through creative writing in the intros, which is helpful. I enjoy doing. But I mean, really, one of the things that I've really, really loved doing, and it was one of my 10 big audacious goals, was to buy an old mountain bike and rebuild it, which is something that I've been doing over the last year. And it's been so, first of all, I can't express how important it is to anybody who's looking to improve themselves to do everything you can to become self-sufficient. And that can be everything from just understanding how to cook basic recipes to understanding what tools you need in your toolbox, metaphorical and literal. And for me specifically, I know there's one friend that I have that I've always looked up to. He's always had, in my eyes, the answers when it comes to camping, outdoorsmanship, bikes, for instance. And I would always bug him, say, hey, how do I fix, my derailleur on my bike? Or, what's the best way to secure my food from bears, that type of thing. And I don't know why I always relied on somebody else to give me answers when we're living in a world where we have all of the information at our fingertips. I think part of me was probably afraid of trying and failing something, which goes back to, a lesson that we already talked about. I really can't stress how important it is to learn these things for yourself. And then at that point, when you become proficient, when you become intermediate and then advanced and then an expert, you get to use your creativity and how you, build up your new mountain bike, or how you pitch your tent. Or there are so many better examples than that. But yes, to answer the question, my creativity is expressed through using my hands, through building that mountain bike, through how I get to structure and build these conversations. It's just, I do my best to use my creative energy in all aspects of my life because I have thankfully become self-sufficient.
Nice. Yeah. What's it like to build a mountain bike, man?
It's awesome, man. It's a blessing and a curse that I bought an old mountain bike because it is literally 17 years old. It's a 2003 Specialized stump jumper, and it's a little bit, I mean, it's outdated in the sense that the frames have evolved, and so the geometry is a little bit different. So I'm trying to fit new components on an old bike, which can be difficult to do. But at the very least, when you're on the trail and you're miles from your car, if something breaks, like a chain breaks, I know how to put a quick link on it, fix it, and get home. Or a tire pops, which is one of the most common problems. If you don't know how to change a tire on a bike, let alone a car, you need to learn how to do that.
Nice.
And it's not hard.
Yeah.
It's really not. Yeah.
Have you come into any big challenges with the bike?
Not my, let me say it this way. I have done a lot on this bike that I've thankfully had work out. I also just changed the drivetrain on my friend's bike, and we did have some issues with that. And so still trying to work through some of those. So it can be very frustrating when you're doing something for somebody else and they're kind of relying on you for your expertise, and it doesn't work exactly as it should. So we're having some issues with the cassette and the gear shifting properly. So yes, I have had bike issues, not necessarily on my bike, but his.
Yeah, I like how taking on this idea of building this old bike up. One, it gives you this release, this creative release. You get to learn, you get to experiment, try new things, and mess around and tinker with it. So it has that value to you in that way. But then at the other side, it's changed the way you live your life with that hobby, biking. You can now run into just about any issue and deal with it. So it's twofold, or I'm sure it has even more, but those two in particular stand out.
Yeah, man, it's really, I don't know. I don't want to oversell, but it's been super empowering to know that I'm capable of doing that. Because it makes you start to ask the question, what else can I do? When you know you're capable of one thing that you thought was hard previously, but you realize through learning and experimentation that it's really not. You start to ask yourself, what other lies have I been telling myself about what I can't do?
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know, man. I mean, let's turn the table back around for a second. I mean, what, I don't know. I don't want to speak for you, but when I said that around the time that we met, that was really when I was starting to transform my life for the better. Was that around the same time for you? Had you been doing it prior to that? What have been some of the things that I don't want to put words in your mouth, but what have been some of the lies that you've told yourself that you say, I just can't do this, but you're still doing it regardless?
Yeah. Well, for the first part, when did I start to transform my life? That's such an interesting question. Yeah, I guess when I found out I was having a daughter.
Yeah.
The only thing I ever, as a kid, as a young adult, I honestly was just like, once I got out of high school and started college, and eventually found myself in a group that drank all the time, or a lot at least, and I just completely threw myself in. Like, it was like all or nothing. I didn't realize I'm 18 now and I can get a fake ID and party and get into the bar, and I can buy weed from this guy down the road. This is the life, man. They'll even let me take out a loan from this place. I just sign this paper and they'll give me $2,000 and I can just party for 4 days. I was just like, it was crazy, the dumbest shit. But the only thing I really ever knew for certain was that I would, one day, if I were ever a dad, that I would be a good dad. And then when that came around, it was just oh, okay, here it is. Here's that moment. But but it was challenging starting out, and still is, maybe even more so now than it was then. But I recognized that I had more sense of time. I think the difference before and after I guess started making these changes for myself was my sense of time. Before having kids, it was today, right now. Like, what do I want to do? What do I want to do right now? What do I want to do tomorrow? If it was even about tomorrow, it really wasn't ever. It was about what could I do now, and how could it be fun, and what's the quickest route to that. But then when I had kids, they grow and they become this measure of time. And that's not all it is. But for me, it was like, this kid that is a baby right now will eventually be walking, and then eventually talking, and then eventually, go to school, and then eventually graduate. And for the first time in my life, I could see past this moment. I could see longevity and recognize that this moment would be the moment of 18 years from now when my kid's graduating, if I didn't do something different. And that was a challenging thought to hold in my mind. And so I started making incremental changes. I'd say that was the biggest moment for me, and continues to be that like guiding light, or that buoy out in the middle of this abyss of crazy fucking life that we have. So I'm incredibly thankful for my children and the purpose that it's instilled. The other question you asked, what was it after that?
I don't remember, but I really want to stress something you said, talking about being able to see, I'm paraphrasing, beyond tomorrow. I think that's not something a lot of people think about. We may think about retirement in the sense that, hey, I need to plan for retirement. I need to plan for when I'm 60. But at the same time, we need to remind ourselves that we don't know if we have that long. But when you can start thinking about longevity in terms of health and wellness, and we can say, hey, I'm not having the healthiest habits, and a year from now, not 50 years, not 24 hours, a year from now, I don't want to be where I am right now. And I know that can be difficult to do, and having a major impetus for change, like having children, can really be that hey, wake up, that red light going off in your head. But when we're able to decide that we want to make that change, that is so powerful. When we decide that we want to look out beyond what I'm drinking tomorrow night, I think that's really a powerful mindset that allows us to have a lot of breakthrough.
Yeah. It's an interesting balance, and I'm just now personally starting to see myself emerge from I guess, or move into this place where I can celebrate and love where I am right now, find the gratitude for where I am, but also still create, because most of my life I've been creating to get away from where I am. And that inherently causes so much underlying pain. It's like all this pain and frustration of where I am. My life is terrible. Like, that's not a thought I want to hold. So for me, I'm just now recognizing that there's this possibility, maybe not just recognizing, but maybe putting my intention and attention on it of, man, I cannot create from this idea that my life is not what it should be. I cannot create from this place of frustration for what I have here, or not having, from this place of lack, but actually sit here in this life and celebrate it fully, love this moment, create from this moment, and recognize that I would like to have something like that at one point, and also recognize that I can create this thing or that thing, and that there's nothing stopping me from that. And so to your point, I like this idea of having a balance of, okay, I'm saving for retirement, but also not get so lost in it that I'm not here.
Yeah. There's literally nothing stopping you from doing the things, from producing music, from doing the things that is going to bring joy and change to your life. And I love hearing you say that.
Yeah, man. Thanks.
Yeah.
What's next? Do we do more questions?
Let's do some more
let's
questions.
Do some more questions.
We don't need it. Like I said offline, we don't need to go to Joe Rogan length, but let's try and at least get one question from everybody on this list. So I feel like I'm not a loser for skipping somebody.
Okay. Yeah. Let's do it.
All right.
We'll start at the top and work our way through. This is your lightning round, Trey. All right. Nicole Jansen. What has been... Go ahead.
Nicole, I feel like I need to give a shout out to everybody. Nicole is a phenomenal woman. She was on the podcast. She hosts Leaders of Transformation. She's just a really powerful businesswoman, and she's helped me make some really good decisions for my business as well. So I truly value her opinion and what the work she does.
Yeah. All right. Shout out to Nicole. What has been your biggest personal aha moment from all the episodes you've done thus far?
I really think it's realizing that happiness is very holistic, and it's not necessarily one thing that we can add or detract from our lives that is just going to bring about constant happiness. So many of us live on this treadmill, this hedonic treadmill of, oh, I will be happy when I get a raise or this new job or this new car. It's such a dangerous mindset to have, because it's always a can that we kick down the line. When we get to that new job, there's something else that we want to set our sights on. So we have to realize that we have the full capacity to be happy now. And it's so much more than joy and contentment and pleasure. It's all of the things it's all of the inputs in your life. And that was one of the biggest realizations for me, to be able to live a fully contented and oftentimes happy life.
Yeah, I love it, man. It's not, there's not a single thing or single moment that will forever flip over that or move that block out of the way, but it's an active, conscious balance across the board.
Yeah, exactly.
Sweet. Next question. What's Frank's last name? How do you pronounce that?
Agen.
I thought so. Okay. Frank Agen. I like this one. Think big. Trey, who would be... Okay, hold on. I have to preface this. It cannot be Tim Ferriss or Ryan Holiday.
Okay, that's fair.
Who would be on your dream list of people to interview? Perhaps someone listening could help make it happen. Oh, of course, he would say that. He is the market or the networking guru. That's very good. Thank you, Frank.
Jimmy Suspect. For sure. I don't know.
He's an asshole, by the way. You don't Jimmy, not Frank. Sorry. You don't want it.
I don't know much about him, but I respect him. I would love to have a conversation with Aubrey Marcus. He just seems like one of the most genuine human beings on this planet.
Yeah. Oh man, that's such a good one. He actually came up in my mind as we were sitting here talking. That's beautiful. Yeah. What an incredible man. His podcasts are off the hook. I hope you at some point definitely get to have him on the podcast.
That'd be incredible.
What is it? What is it that, if you don't know him very well, what is it about him that calls him?
He seems like he's. This is a terrible word. He seems like he's so well rounded. He owns or co-owns On It with Joe Rogan. His podcasts and his Instagram content are so inclusive. And that's so. So let's do better. Let's just have a positive mentality. Let's see how much we're capable of achieving. He probably one of the first things that I saw of his, he recited the Warrior poem on Facebook to like some really, not Facebook, on YouTube, some really powerful music. And I'll actually put that in the show notes. It's incredible.
So good.
Yeah. And just that, he's always been inspirational to me since then. And I honestly have not listened to his podcast all that much, but the guests he has on there, the clips I've seen, he too comes from a place of curiosity. At least that's what I believe. And he wants to know what he can do better to help others in this world and, experience it fully. That's my impression of him. I may be way off base, but that's how I feel about him. And that's why I would love to have that conversation.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. I've been just obsessed with his podcasts since I started this whole journey. I found his podcast shortly after Tim Ferriss, and the idea of him being well-rounded, holy cow, that's like probably one of the simplest ways to put it. He is a solid dude in every way. He's constantly working on himself, but even more so, what I love about the thought of you guys meeting up is you sound like you have this desire. You've always spoken about it, that you want to be 100% authentic. And I don't know if there's any other podcast host out there on this type of like personal development journey that is as authentic as he is. This types of stories he'll tell about himself are just ruthless. He no punch is held. And then he brings it home with the stories and lessons he learned from it.
I love that.
Yeah, I would recommend listening to his episode with Peter Crone. He actually has 2 or 3 with Peter Crone.
Okay.
Just they're phenomenal. They're right up your alley, man. I think you would really dig them.
Cool. Yeah, I will absolutely listen to those.
Yeah, check them out. Aubrey Marcus, awesome. Yeah, I definitely see that in your future, especially with all the big things happening past this 100th episode, joining the Believe network, and just the trajectory you're on right now. There's no doubt in my mind that you'll have Ryan Holiday, Aubrey Marcus, these guys knocking on your door.
Man. I appreciate that.
All right, let's move through. Let's get this lightning round rolling. Let's see. What keeps you motivated? This is a question from Karen. Is this the Karen that I know?
Yeah. So Karen is a phenomenal woman here locally. She is the person I get to have intellectual conversations about nutrition and wellness and the brain. And I will try to sound smart around her, but she's always able to, without cruel intention, make me feel stupid. But I hold
Trey,
her in the highest
right.
regard.
Got to correct you on this.
Yeah, exactly.
Good.
No, Karen is fantastic, and we love having just conversations about meditation and self-improvement. And so what keeps me motivated is I think, going back to our conversation on regression, while I'm not afraid of regressing into a past life anymore, I know how much work it has taken to get here. And I know that it's something that I get a ton of value out of. And honestly, the alternative is doing nothing. And I don't like that. I don't like the idea of sitting around watching TV. I don't like the idea of sitting around watching video games. There's nothing wrong with that. If video games bring value to your life and joy, fantastic. I always thought that when I graduated college, I was just going to get a job and then play video games from 5 to 9. That wasn't in the cards for me. I tried it. It doesn't bring joy to me. And so continuing to do the work that I'm doing, because it's bringing me money. I run a successful business. It feels really good that I'm able to do so, but it's because I enjoy doing the things that I do. I enjoy having these conversations, building relationships, both with my clients and my guests. And so there's just not an alternative for me. And I know that feels like a cop out, but I don't want to do nothing. And if I were to quit working hard, that is what would be in my future.
Nice.
Yeah.
So you're motivated by moving forward rather than backwards. Yeah. I have another suggestion. Not that I know.
Yes, please, man. Please, no, go. Yeah.
But this might be one that you potentially are overlooking. There's this idea of structure, and that comes up in this, in what I know about you. What keeps me motivated? It's what keeps you motivated, rather. This idea that there's simplicity and ease and routine built into your life.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you have structure. So what was coming up for me when I was asking this question is, what is it when you wake up in the morning, what's the thought that gets you to put your feet on the ground and actually get out of bed? And the idea of your life being, having this ease because of the strong structures you've put in there, came up. Just a thought. I wanted to see what came up for you.
Absolutely. There's probably a question in this list somewhere about some of my most influential guests. And one of my biggest breakthroughs, Christina Wise, she's a millionaire coach and a money coach. And I'm actually in her money class right now, and I'm learning a ton about that. But when we first, so I had her on the podcast, we spoke, it was groundbreaking. And then I had a consult call with her, and she pointed out that it seems to, I'm using her words, it seems to me that you want to have a simple life. And I was like, yeah, I do. I do want to have a simple life. I'm tired of trying to be somebody that I'm not. And so, yes, that really struck a chord with me. So what motivates me to put my feet on the ground in the morning? Yes, I do like structure. I do like knowing what to expect is going to happen. So I know when I put my feet on the ground, I get to get up, I get to make coffee. and I know that I get to sit down and read for an hour, and I know the feeling of the first few sips of coffee. To me, I kind of equate it to the first few sips of alcohol. It's just that buzz that you get just in a different way.
Mhm.
And so I get to wake up and have a morning that I have designed as part of my life. And so knowing what to expect throughout my day leaves very little room for surprises. Not that I don't enjoy surprises, but only when there's a good connotation to them, not a surprise that, a client website went down, but hey, somebody's, calling to wish me happy birthday, that sort of thing. So yes, I do love the routine. I do love the simplicity. I do love knowing what to expect. So getting one final note on that.
Go for it, man.
So you and I met Sean Barklow around the same time. Hopefully you remember his name. Do you remember Sean?
Yeah, I remember seeing him at Dub Talks.
Yeah, so we've stayed connected. He's a great guy. He works for this company called Send Out Cards. He sends me all kinds of postcards all the time, which I really enjoy. But the point is, he told me, and I think you and I have talked about this before, about a practice where you basically just tell yourself 1, 2, 3, get up, and then obviously take some willpower to actually do it. But I use that every single morning. Like I can lay there for as long as I want to, but if I count down in my head and I say get up, then I actually do it. He credits that to somebody else. I don't remember who that is.
It's Mel Robbins, I think.
Mel Robbins. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. Sweet, man.
Yeah.
Awesome. Moving down the list in this lightning round, we are with Priscilla of Everyday Celebrations. That's interesting.
Yeah. She's so cool. She was a guest as well. She actually, for almost a year now, every single day she does a Facebook Live where she celebrates a random event or holiday. There's a holiday for everything, and she celebrates those. Nice. And so it's really cool. Yeah.
Wow. And fitting for this lady here. What memory? This is a cool question. My favorite one so far. What memory does your favorite holiday spark? So first of all, what's your favorite holiday?
Well, I really enjoy the atmosphere of the 4th of July, but if I can go straight into that question, I remember as a kid during Christmas time getting like Domino Rally and getting like new snow pants and just being around a family structure that I thought would always exist. And so when I think about holidays that I really bring a ton of joy to my life, it's probably Christmas.
Nice.
Yeah.
Sweet. Okay, keeping moving. Let's go to Tad Lusk. At what moment did you know that you wanted to start a podcast, or even just dedicate yourself to something different than you were doing?
I mean, we can joint answer this question, man. I don't know. You following the leadership group that we were in, following the Dub Talks, you and I stayed connected, and this is the story I always tell. We consistently had deep conversations, and I don't want to, sometimes I feel like I'm giving ourselves too much credit when I say that, but I mean, it's what they were. I mean, they weren't surface level conversations about the weather. We were constantly asking and challenging each other on how we can do better. I mean, that's what it was.
For sure.
Right?
Yeah, 100%. And then you brought it up to just start recording them.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
I think that's how it went.
It is. But I mean, that also reminds me, like we used to actually sit in yoga studios and we had groups of people come out and have these conversations with us, which was really cool.
Yeah. Yeah. That was nice.
What did we, they actually started as the Mosaic. That's why we named it this.
That's right.
Yeah.
Crazy, man. That seems like a lifetime ago.
I know. Blame Ernie for that name.
Blame it.
I actually love the name. I really do love the name.
Yeah. It's a sweet idea.